Whether you believe that God is a separate entity, or you believe that we are all God, it doesn't matter. The question is, did God create bad or evil? So let's talk about that in this video. Although it's a misnomer to describe this as a time frame, it's still helpful for our limited 3D linear brains. So let's go ahead and look at it as though we're stepping way back in time. Way back before there was humans, there was the earth, that there was duality, there was unity. Another way to describe this is it is the all as one. Or even another way to describe it is unconditional love, when only unconditional love existed. And the reason why discussing this in a time frame is a bit of a misnomer is because all of that is still true, because everything happens simultaneously. However, when only unconditional love exists and only unity exists, then all we have is endless abundance and absolute paradise. So why would God create something negative? Why would God create the opposite of this? But before we answer why was it created by God, we actually have to say, did God actually create evil or bad? Before we can answer the why question, though, we have to ask another one. And that is, was God involved in the creation of bad or evil? In order to look at this, we have to say, is God an omnipotent force? If so, then the only thing that exists is whatever God wants. If for some reason, though, we believe that God is not an omnipotent force, then we could open ourselves up to the idea that God came along into a universe that already existed and it already had duality, being good and bad. The problem with this then is, well, who created that before God came along? That means that there isn't an omnipotent force, or at least God isn't the omnipotent force, and something else is. It's a logical problem that doesn't really have an answer. The only way for all of this to be true is that God has to be an omnipotent force, and that means that God created evil and bad and good and duality. God didn't accidentally create something, because that's once again suggesting that omnipotence isn't truly there. If you believe that good and evil already existed before God came along, or that it's a law of the universe that God has to abide by, then the whole idea of omnipotence starts to fall apart. In that case, we end up viewing the universe kind of as science does, saying that all of existence is a random dice roll called the Big Bang. So if you're still with me and believe that God is omnipotent and chose to create bad and evil and good and all of duality and everything in between, then we can proceed to the next question. All of the negativity, the bad, the evil, was created by God then. Why? Well, let's step back for a second to that original concept, which is unity is all that exists. And maybe before there were other beings, then it's absolute abundance, prosperity, and paradise, population 1. That might not seem to be enough. If you are the omnipotent creator of everything that exists, why would you stop with just that? You would want to create more experience, more opportunity, more possibilities. So of course you have to open yourself up to the idea that there is something to compare your paradise to. So why am I talking about all of this before we finalize the answer to this question? It's because the people that I work with generally are so miserable. They are suffering so much from negative entity attachments, from childhood traumas, from negative energies, from physical pain, all of these different difficulties that they're experiencing in their lives. They think to themselves, well, how can I believe in this spiritual realm if this omnipotent unity construct would want suffering? Why would that want me to suffer? And that's such an important question for anybody to ask, because if the answer is because they're evil and they just like to see suffering, then the type of healing that you're going to need is extremely difficult to find. But if you say, oh, okay, there's a purpose, there is a reason for all of this suffering. And actually, there are many reasons for it, and that's essentially the answer to this question. Why would we, or why would God create duality? Because there's lessons to be learned. There's something new to be gained from the experience of either the paradise or the suffering. Both of them are very comparable to each other. You can really recognize paradise when suffering is introduced to the equation. Christianity teaches us that God gave us the free will to decide whether we wanted to love something like God or whether we wanted to be selfish and mired in our misery. So throughout the misery, can we still have unconditional love for God? This is a noble pursuit. And even if you don't believe in the full Christian approach, you could still say that, well, this suffering on this planet is extreme and intense, and it comes in so many different forms. So wouldn't it be amazing to be able to have unconditional love for all of it? Every person, every animal, every molecule, everything that exists despite the suffering that we're going through. If we can do that, talk about an accomplishment. This is better than winning the Nobel Prize or being the MVP of the Super Bowl. If you can actually, truly, deeply love unconditionally all that exists through the mired experiences of low vibrational, low frequency suffering at all of its levels, then you've really done something amazing. So why wouldn't we, as God, decide to go ahead and create this challenge for ourselves to see if we can actually get there? And to go all the way back to what I was saying about how everything is unconditional love, and it always has been, that is still true. That even all the suffering and all the misery and all the emotions that we do not like, these are all actually unconditional love. Because it's us, because it's God, and that's all God is, and that's all we are. There are so many other possible reasons. It's very entertaining to have to be challenged. If we go and watch a movie or read a book and the plot is all everything's fine, there's no challenge to overcome, then we get pretty bored with it fairly quickly. So we actually need the challenge in order for us to even be entertained, even though we talk about all the time, I just want things to be easy, or I just want peace. What we actually crave is the challenge. It's overcoming the challenge. The most popular entertainment all across the globe is sports and movies and all of these things that I'm talking about. And none of them make it easy on any of the participants. Even as an audience member, you are straining and rooting for your team to win or for your favorite character to persevere. It's always the same. So we are attracted to this. And with that in mind, we can embrace all of the challenges that we experience in this life in the same vein as God experiencing all the challenges that God created. I hope this makes sense. I hope this helped you take another look at the misery and the suffering that you're going through and that everybody else is going through. Most of you are empaths and you are struggling with all of the misery all around you. But remember, unity. It's all us. It is all God experiencing its own creation at every second of every moment of every day. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate liking and subscribing and all those silly YouTube things. It does help. I love you unconditionally, and I'll see you in the next video.